I get it. You're standing in the lab, eyes on the bench, and you're wondering whether spending a few $100s on a Microtiter shaker is really worth it. You've probably seen a couple of different models on the shelf, maybe even read a spec sheet that lists 0.1100 RPM and 3 millimeters orbital motion. And you're trying to decide if any of those numbers actually translate into smoother experiments and less hassle later on. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The hesitation is real. You don't want to end up with a shaker that's either too finicky to set up or too noisy to sit next to a microscope, but you also don't want to skimp and end up remixing plates by hand every time. Let's walk through what the IKA 320-8000 MTS actually does when you put it to work in a typical biology or chemistry routine and see whether its strengths line up with the situations you face. First off, the MTS is a benchtop orbital shaker built to hold either 2 or 4 microplates, which is a nice flexibility if you occasionally need to scale up a protocol or run a few controls side by side. The speed dial lets you dial anything from a gentle 0 revolutions per minute up to a brisk 1,100 revolutions per minute, and you can set a timer that runs from a single second up to several hours. That means you can program a short spin to just break surface tension on a freshly added reagent, or you can leave it running for a long incubation without having to watch the clock. If you're the type of researcher who runs ELISAs, cell culture plates, or kinetic assays that need consistent mixing, the orbital motion of 3 millimeters is actually the sweet spot. It's big enough to keep the liquid moving across the wells, avoiding the dead zones that sometimes happen with smaller or linear shakers, but it isn't so aggressive that you'll end up splashing or creating bubbles that ruin optical readings. In practice, I've seen labs set up a 96-well plate with a protein binding assay, punch the start button, and walk away for the recommended 30-minute incubation. When they come back, every well looks uniformly cloudy, no streaks, no pockets of untouched solution. That kind of reliability is what saves you from rerunning an entire plate because of a mixing issue. Now, who should really consider adding the IKA MTS to their bench? If you're running a high-throughput workflow where dozens of plates move through the shaker each day, the ability to hold 4 plates at once cuts down on handling time. It also makes sense for anyone who needs precise timing. The digital timer eliminates the guesswork of, did I leave it on too long? The fact that the controls are a rotary dial rather than a touchscreen is a subtle win in a wet lab environment. You can spin the knob with gloved hands, and the display is easy to read from a distance. The unit runs on standard 220240V, which is common in many European and Asian labs, so you won't have to worry about transformers or adapters if that's your power situation. On the flip side, if your bench space is already cramped, the MTS does sit on a small footprint, but still needs a clear area around it for the plate footprint and for you to load and unload safely. It's not a wall-mountable unit, so you'll need a dedicated spot. Also, if you're only ever shaking one plate at a time, the 4-plate capacity might feel like overkill, and a cheaper single-plate rocker could do the job just as well. The speed range is generous, but it's worth noting that the highest speeds can generate a noticeable hum. In a quiet microscopy suite, that noise might be a distraction, so you'll want to test it during a quiet period before committing to a full-day run. A practical strength of the IKA MTS is its durability. IKA's reputation in lab equipment isn't something that comes from flashy marketing. It comes from years of labs relying on their mixers to keep running day after day. The motor is sealed, which helps keep out spills and aerosols, something you'll appreciate when you're handling volatile reagents. The digital display is backlit, so you can glance at the speed and timer without turning on the overhead lights, which is handy during night shift runs. And because the speed and time are set with a single dial, there's less chance of programming errors that can happen with multiple buttons or menus. One hidden trade-off is the lack of advanced programmability. Some Heinz shakers let you create multi-step protocols, changing speed mid-run or integrating temperature control. The MTS sticks to a single speed and a single timer per run, which is perfectly fine for most mixing tasks, but if you need a gradient of agitation for a specific protocol, you'll have to stop, adjust, and restart manually. That adds a little extra hands-on time, which might be a consideration if you're aiming for a fully automated workflow. Another nuance is the 3 mm orbital radius. While it works well for standard 96 well,